Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule the Galaxy fans, it is Joe in the pilot seat. And you'll notice that we've done some fun shows recently, some side shows, not side shows like clowns or anything like that, but side shows with some of our special guests. We've had author Adam Bray, we've had our good friend Steve Glosson from Geek Out Loud. And today we're going to add in another friend of mine who another one of those guys who was one of the reasons why I started doing this podcast with my son in the first place, Mr. Scott Ryfun. Scott, how are you?
I'm great. That's like heavy though. That's like we're one of an inspiration. What does that mean exactly? I mean,
Well, gosh, how long have I been listening to podcasts? 10 years plus now, right?
hmm,
2010, somewhere around there. So 12 years. Yeah, back at that time frame, people were like, "Hey, do you listen to podcasts?" I said, "What are podcasts?" And so
yeah.
then they said, "You can listen to just about anything you want on your phone." And I said, "Okay, well, what do I like?" So I started dialing in what I liked, and the Star Wars, the Pittsburgh Steelers, things about Italy, things like that. And through the process of elimination, you try out, oh, does this show? What is this? Does it fit for me? Does it work? I found my Star Wars story. I found Geek Out Loud. I found Rebel Force Radio, Star Wars Report, and lo and behold, on most of those things, your name popped up, or Steve Glosson's name popped up, or Adam Bray popped up. So I was like, these are guys I want to get to know because I love listening to them talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, my name comes up in places and then sometimes I don't know it and sometimes it's not very nice. So that's why when I find out later and I go, "Oh, really? That's not." I found out like one day out of nowhere on Twitter somebody had talked smack about me and Glosson from like months ago and somebody said, "Hey, did you see this?" I went, "Oh, I didn't see that. That was not very nice. Why would they do that? What did I do to this person that I've never heard of before?"
Well, they weren't
But
talking about a show you were on with me, were they?
no. This is before. This is pre you. Um, but yeah, it was just one of those weird things. It is one of those weird things. And one time somebody posted a list of podcasts to never listen to, and it was Geek Out Loud with Steve Glosson, Rebel Force Radio, and anything with Scott Ryfun.
Wow. I'm not going
Yeah.
to pin those people in any kind of religious or political beliefs, but I have a feeling there were some things behind that to say that about those three shows.
Yeah, it was
So
very odd. And I was, that always kind of puzzled me that people would just come at you with such unmitigated hate with never having interacted with you before.
yeah, no. No, no,
But,
no.
you know,
Um I know I get it. I mean, believe it or not, we have had some people say some negative things to us or email us negative things, and that's okay. It's part of the thing when you put yourself out there and say, "Hey, listen to
yeah.
me," you're going to get some positive and you're going to get some negative.
But
So
see, that amazes me that because when I listen to you guys, I feel like you may have one of the widest funnels in all of Star Wars podcasting because you seem to be able to appeal to everybody, and you legitimately are inclusive. There are a lot of people who run around going, "We're inclusive," and what they mean is we're inclusive of these five groups of people. You know what I mean?
right.
Whereas you guys actually, and you give people of varying perspectives. Sometimes you give them the stick, you give them the wheel of the show. So I can't understand why anybody would express any hate or disdain towards you guys, of
Yeah,
anybody.
I don't think it's been as much hate or disdain as things, complaining about either topics we brought up or maybe some points we've made about certain characters or things like
Okay.
that. So
Okay. So,
it's
so
not
that's
a
like the fun stuff.
yeah, I mean they're not going, gosh, you guys stink, we hate you.
Okay.
It's more
It's
of
not okay.
I can't believe you have this thought about this person, or why do
Oh, no,
you
that's
care
good
about
stuff.
that?
Okay.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
fun. That's the stuff that we can sit at the table and argue about. I
Yeah.
like that. It's not the I hate this person, don't ever listen to this person, they're evil, and all this other weird stuff. That's the stuff that I just totally don't get, and I don't get how it has taken over and infected fandom. That's what I
100%.
don't get.
100%. And we've talked about this ad nauseum on our show and with different guests. And I don't get it either. And we all know that none of this is perfect. Star Wars isn't perfect. So we know that there's going to be certain things that people like and things that certain people don't like. But I do think I will accept that compliment from you because I do think that we do our best to say, oh, we want more discussions on this. Let's invite somebody on who knows about that. We want to
Mhm.
talk about books. Great, we'll talk about books. You want to talk about collecting? We'll talk about
Yeah.
that. Our friend Brent Dykman on the show. You want to talk about Star Wars Legion for an hour? Let's go do that. I mean,
Well, let's not go crazy here, but
but but yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you are right. We try to cover a little bit of everything, and I don't know if we're any different than a lot of people, but we try to be, and we try to just be fun. So
you are a lot of different because again, there are a lot of people who go, we're inclusive, and they literally only include this little group of people that they think they're being inclusive of, and they're actually not. And you guys really do. I will sit there and I go, wow, that I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that person or that perspective. Okay, that's pretty cool. And but you do that. And so, one of the things I appreciate about your program is that you are probably the most diverse podcast out there. And people won't believe that. They don't want to believe that because they think they have the most diverse podcast out there. But you guys really actually do reach out to everybody, it seems like. So,
well, I appreciate that. I really do.
mhm.
And yeah, it's a lot of
And
fun.
that's,
And the one thing I'm seeing is
mhm.
there are podcasts out there that are so like joined at the hip with Lucasfilm or with Disney. And
Mhm.
it's like, oh, we're having a celebration. We're gonna have those people there. We're gonna open up
Yeah.
Galaxy's Edge. We're gonna have those people there.
Yeah.
I, I you know, I'll admit we're not. I think it might have been you or Adam saying, we're not shills. We're not people who are going to
Yeah.
go, everything about Star Wars is great, and if you don't love it, you don't need to listen to us. No, we say we love Star Wars, but there's parts of it where we're like, that didn't hit all the way. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the people who are sold all the way through their souls to say we're going to support everything, but
Mhm.
we're the ones who, daggone it, if we want to rip on Hasbro for half an hour, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
I used to be that guy. It was like, I'm going to support everything. And now I'm not that way anymore just because, but we're also in an era where there is so much
yeah.
that you don't really have to worry about it. But I was the guy back in the day that was like, you better not talk bad about, well, you know what? I'm sorry. You better not talk bad about the prequels, and you better not talk bad about the Ewok movies, and you better not talk bad about the Droids cartoon. But if you want to talk bad about the Ewok cartoon, I'm probably okay with that because it's to this day I just didn't find it good.
Well, you we'll just hit and bounce around a few topics, but one of the topics that stood out to me that you brought up, because I was like, hey, let's just talk and let's just talk Star Wars. You brought up headcanon,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that topic because there are definitely things. I mean, I'm looking at my bookshelves. You have done a great job of putting your bookshelves behind you. I, on the other hand, have them in front of me, so I can't show off mine like you are on YouTube right now. But there are so many things in the books and in the comics, and from when I was a little kid through the time of the prequels and all that, that still is near and dear to my heart. That to
Mm.
me, unless somebody tells me 100% this is not part of Star Wars, to me it's just as much Star Wars as what we watch in the theaters and what's on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
Sometimes in your hearts and minds, it's more than what's in the movies and on Disney Plus. I do. The funny thing is, like, you and I are similar age wise. I think I'm, a little bit your senior, but not much. And we were kids. We saw Star Wars. Star Wars was the greatest thing ever, and we loved it, loved it, loved it. And it's one of those things I also have to explain to people. People say, "What is the appeal to Star Wars? What is it that actually grabbed you about Star Wars?" And then they expect you to say, "Well, it's the grand." Exposition of the mythological underpinnings of mankind's experiences. And the truth is, we were 6 years old, or I was
Yep.
6 years old. I
Yep.
didn't know anything about all that stuff. I didn't know anything about, mythological tropes and all this stuff. What I knew was I went in the theater and it blew me out of the back of the theater. And it
Same.
stuck with me there. I can't pretend to some intellectual connection to Star Wars when, July 29th, 1977, 6-year-old me walked out of the movie theater and yelled to my brother, "That's the greatest movie I'm ever going to see for the rest of my life." And, so you can sit there and rationalize it later as an adult, but the truth is, whatever this thing is, it's very primal, and it got us early, and it stuck with us. And it's a huge story. It's a huge story, and
It is.
I've always been fascinated by big stories. These big interlocking things. One thing I always loved about comic books. You bought a few comic books in your life.
I have.
What got you buying comic books?
Well, I just think it was, well, one, it was fairly inexpensive at that time, 35 cents or whatever, and you could go and
Mhm.
sit in your room and be away from everything else in the world and go into this adventure here with the person that you
Mhm.
thought was a hero or villain or what have you. But yeah, I love that it was every month, you could expect that next story, that next part of whatever was going on. For me, it was, I loved Batman, I loved Captain America, um, obviously the Star Wars books from the late 70s to the early 80s. So
Mhm.
that was what every now and then a Hawkeye, a Green Arrow, uh, people like that. But yeah, again, you mentioned before, I like guys with bows and arrows. I don't know why. Um, but but um, but yeah, it was just that big overarching story that all that
Yes.
was inside of, right?
Yeah. And that's what I love. My comic book story started with Star Wars because the comic books were always around and I always liked them,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't become fanatical about them until Star Wars came out. And once the Star Wars adaptation ended at number 6, I thought, okay, well, that's it. It's over. Then all of a sudden there was number 7 and there was more story. And then there was number 8 and there was more story. And so all of a sudden we got to continue the adventures of the Star Warriors, as they would say back then, and that was amazing to me. So every when we'd go on vacation, because you didn't have comic shops everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly not in Brunswick, Georgia, little tiny rinky dink Brunswick, Georgia. I mean, my before there was a certain bookstore that did open that started ordering from Diamond over time, but from 77, 78, 79, really the main place I would find comic books was in convenience stores.
Exactly.
And I knew which convenience stores in town had the good racks. So if we stopped somewhere for some, Mom, I got to go into this one because I know what they've got the good one.
Right.
And rack. And I remember my brother used to always tell me, hey, my brother's got 6 years on me. Hey, if you see a number 1, buy it because they're all worth a fortune. So, I would say, okay, well, I'm going to buy a number 1. If I see a number 1 on the shelf, I'm going to buy it because I'll be able to pay for my college with it. And I was in one of the convenience stores. I was in Jack's Minute Market on Highway 341 in beautiful Brunswick, Georgia.
Your
And
recall cracks me up.
they had this really cool, it wasn't a spinner rack, it was like a flat mounted rack on the, like they have the boards with the shelves come out of them, like with candy bars and stuff on them.
Yeah.
Okay, this one just had a magazine rack or a comic book rack mounted onto that board next to the candy bars. And it was really cool because it was expansive. Everything was, you didn't have to spin the rack and flip through anything because it was all just right there in your face. And I remember they had the Thing number 1 in that rack, in that rack. And I said, well, there you go. Number 1, I'm buying it. So I bought the Thing number 1 and I read it and I thought it was great. I loved the Thing. Fantastic Four are great. And then the Thing number 2 comes out. And I'm like, well, I've bought number 1. I got to get number 2, right? And number 2 opens up and he's doing some kind of cleanup in the Baxter building. And it says, oh, you want to know what happened here? You better check out Fantastic Four number 256.
Yeah. The little asterisk.
Yeah. Asterisk and into the box. Editorial remark. And I went, okay, well, let me go get Fantastic Four 256. So I did that. And then there's like one panel where a nihilist is doing something and something glows behind him. And you're going, oh, that's interesting. And then it says, if you want to know what's going on in this panel, you better buy Avengers 233. And I went, oh, okay. But I was fascinated by the idea that there were all of these different books being made by different people that all fit together like a puzzle.
Right.
This Thing story didn't have anything to do with Fantastic Four 256, but you saw the effects of what happened in Fantastic Four 256. The Avengers and Fantastic Four were kind of linked, but they were two very different sides of the same type of story. So I'm really fascinated by all of these interlocking pieces being put together by different people, fitting together in a puzzle. And when, early on Star Wars, you didn't have a lot of that because you had the Solo trilogy by Brian Daley, probably my favorite of all time. But, that all happened well before Star Wars. And you had the Marvel stuff, which was happening contemporaneously with the films. And then, what else did you have?
Yeah.
What else was there? Holiday special?
Splinter in the Mind's Eye.
Splinter, which was a sequel.
And then a little while later, what? post Empire. There was the Lando trilogy.
Yeah, Lando in 83, I think, right about the time
Yep.
Jedi came out. You had the Lando stuff come out.
Yeah. So I mean, you're right. And so not only speaking about the comics, because the comics are near and dear to my heart. I have pretty much all the comics. I know you have a complete set of them, but I really like these when I want to just read and dabble, in the
Yeah.
comics, because these trade paperbacks of the originals from 77 to 85 are phenomenal. I mean, you've got so much packed into them, and so those are great. Some of my favorite stories ever, when the Magnificent Seven story, basically, of Han and them in
The Duba
episodes.
3.
Yep, 7,
Yeah.
8, 9, all that, and then the Doom World with Luke and Chewie and all those guys in that water
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
You remember? I mean, our imaginations were going right to, oh my gosh, is this going to be in the next movie? Is this going to be, the next story that we're following? We had no idea, but they were taking us all these magnificent places that we'd never been before, and it all meant something to us.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, the original Solo trilogy, I've got them sitting right here in front of me, and some of my most favorite stories ever. And until somebody tells me you cannot consider that Star Wars, to me, that trilogy and these comics are just as important to me as the movies are.
Well, yeah, to me, particularly the Marvel comics, they were Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
When we didn't have a movie, they were. So when we didn't know there was going to be another movie, that was what we had. And so when they kind of reset the canon in 91, and nobody wants to talk about the fact that they reset the canon in 91, but they did. I mean, when Heir to the Empire came out,
Yes.
they did that. Heir to the Empire blew up. And someday we've talked, you and I have talked about that on this program a few times.
We have.
One day we will have to really just spend an hour talking about that book and how it blew up. And I don't even really want to talk about the contents of the book that much, because I don't think it's particularly well written, but just the phenomenon that the book is. You could spend an hour just talking about that. But when that
100%.
happened, when that happened, the comics started coming back out again. The kids books, the Davids, that did those Glove of Darth Vader and all those, Mission to Mount Yoda and all that stuff.
Heck yeah.
And they all kind of tried to make that a consistent canon, but in doing so, they pretty much said, oh, that Marvel stuff, that's not canon anymore. In fact, when you just held up the book that you like to go through, it was the Dark Horse a long time ago reprint series.
Yep.
And I don't know if you remember this or not, but in fact, I would bet it's probably in the copy on the back cover. When they issued it, they didn't issue it as this is great Star Wars stuff. They issued it as this is a kitschy throwback kind of thing that'll, does it say, what's it say on the back?
It's basically, I mean, it's oh goodness, a long time ago, blah, blah, blah.
But it seems like they didn't really take it seriously. Yeah. See?
Yeah.
See?
6-foot rabbit, carnivorous robot named. Yeah. So you had, and it's now for the first time, the entire Marvel series is collected into book format. Collector of kitsch, each standalone book. Yep.
And that's what I'm saying. That's how they regarded Marvel Star Wars at the time. And that really kind of annoyed me. All these people got mad in 2015 when they reset the canon. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And you had the society. Yeah, you had the Society for the Original Canon, whatever, the expanded universe. And I joined some of those groups, and I did, but these guys were all really mad that the canon had been thrown out because all this interwoven storyline had been built since 1991. And I get it, but at the same time, it was always understood that if George ever superseded anything, it was going to be superseded. If Lucasfilm as an entity decided to supersede something, it was all going to hell. Nobody ever said this is 100% the confirmed and established canon. But I had already gone through that before, so I didn't have this period of mourning. I understood its business. At the end of the day, Star Wars isn't art that belongs to the people. It's a business.
Yeah. Yeah, but
which is why some of the creators don't get that we are the customers, and they should get that as well. But that's a different topic.
Some creators think of us as the enemies. You have to remember that.
Yeah, yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that's a problem as well.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is you mentioned that about the kind of redux of everything in 1991. People do not remember, and my dog has decided to continuously bark in the background.
Okay.
But after the Droid and Ewok cartoons, after the Ewok movies,
Mhm.
we went into mega silence except for what, West End Games, I
Well, we
think.
had we had West End Games, and we had Star Wars 3D from Blackthorn,
Okay.
if you remember that.
I don't remember that. I did not.
No?
That's not one thing I ever jumped into. No.
Okay. So Marvel ended the comic in 86.
Mm-hmm.
And they had gone, if you remember, before they ended the comic, they went bi-monthly. And that's always the we're about to die sign for a comic. So they went bi-monthly. Circulation had dropped dramatically, and from what I understand, they were having trouble getting stories approved by Lucasfilm at the same time. I think Lucasfilm just didn't care at that point. But there were these little things that were coming out. 10th anniversary, 87, they started the West End Games stuff. I have the original West End Games books, and they have the 10th anniversary logo on them. And they also did Blackthorn Comics did a 3-issue Star Wars 3D.
Okay, I've heard of, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
now I remember, but I've never had them or anything like that. But okay,
I got the first one and the third one at the comic shops when I was in college, and the second one I had to get off of eBay for years because it never showed up at the comic shop, just never appeared. But I did wind up with it, so I've got it a full set. But they really kind of, like you said, went into hibernation because what else was there?
No,
and
it was
every so often there was a thing, and then it wouldn't really take off, and then they whatever, and so when Heir to the Empire came out, I thought that was going to be just another, here's another thing they're going to throw out there, and 5 people will appreciate it, and it'll go away.
It's to put it into perspective based on what good friend of the show, and I just was sitting here thinking about his name, and I'm blanking it. Runs Fantha Tracks.
Mark Newbold.
Mark Newbold. I had his name in my head. Thank you. Mark Newbold told me on one show one time, Heir to the Empire, when it comes to how it affected Star Wars and how it affected sales of things, was a nuclear bomb.
Yes.
Compared to the High Republic being a duck fart. If you want to put the size and the explosiveness from it, the scope, that's how he phrased it. And I always loved that he had said that, because I was like, wow, I guess we just didn't realize how big that really was.
I did. That's the thing. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I did that day. And I told you this story on this program about how, I'm a day and date guy. I love day and date. I don't know why. I've always been a fan of when something comes out, I want it that day. And I almost couldn't get it that day. And I was going, why in the hell can I not get this? And it's funny because I'm sure, I know you've seen the pictures that I've been posting on Twitter and stuff as I've gone through my storage unit over the last several months. And one of the things that I found was a lot of I keep things because a lot of times, because for some reason I've always had it in my head that someday I'll be talking about this again and I need this to prove it.
Yep.
And I've kept several of the Sunday papers with the top 10 list, the New York Times bestseller list, and Heir to the Empire is like number 1 or number 2 all summer long, which was just insane.
Yeah.
But I ran across some of those then. But anyway, this whole thing, this was a canon reset.
Yeah.
And so they started putting this together. And I remember at the time them bagging on the Marvel Star Wars, as we just proved. And I remember going, well, the hell with that. Because I love Marvel Star Wars. I adore Marvel Star Wars. And some of these stories are much better than what we're seeing today. And as far as I'm concerned, if anything contradicts them, I'm defaulting to what I like more. To me, they're just better stories than the ones you're telling. Sorry.
You're defaulting to your own headcanon.
Yeah, and that's where my headcanon stuff first came around, and probably why I didn't get crushed when Disney reset it, because A, I understand business, and B, because I've gone through this before, and I kind of learned about headcanon the hard way, and that is, if you don't like the story they're telling, there's another story you can stick in there in its place and put that, and try to find a way to put it together. I wrestled for a long time with Marvel Star Wars Annual #1 because, there are 3 Jedi that come to help him, and they make the strong implication that it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vader, and Luke's father that help the people of Sky.
Right.
And, at the end, they even say, well, who was, because I said, Obi-Wan Kenobi's there, Darth Vader's there. And, who's the third one? Oh, you wear his saber. And so I always went, well, gosh, that just doesn't work, does it? But I kind of find a way to make it work. You know how you make it work?
I want to hear.
Okay. We know Darth Vader is somebody, right?
Yeah.
we also know the galaxy at large doesn't really know who he is. In fact, they confirmed that on the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, right?
Right.
They kind of confirmed we don't really know who this guy is, but we know he's a badass and he kills people and he's pretty evil. But we also know this: he's a Force user, and we know that somehow he had to learn to be a Force user. We know he's great with a lightsaber. So I started thinking, maybe the galaxy as a whole understands that Vader is a fallen Jedi of some sort. And maybe different planets and different cultures have come up with who they think he is. And so maybe those three people that went to Sky and saved everybody were Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Mace Windu, who they believe later became Darth Vader. Because they don't know. He disappeared, and then all of a sudden Vader shows up. They don't know what happened in the Emperor's offices,
No. We don't know that the Emperor took those guys out real quick in that scene.
No. Yeah, it could have been any of those Jedi. It could have been Kit Fisto, who they think was later Darth Vader. You know what I mean? I mean, seriously. So,
are you saying that just to get Jimmy and Jason to listen to the show?
No, absolutely not. No, or it could have been Plo Koon, because Plo Koon's already got a breathing thing going, right?
True, very true.
So, so what I'm saying is, obviously, a lot of people around the galaxy probably figured out that he's a fallen Jedi. Probably most people don't figure it's Anakin, because, I mean, how could it be Anakin Skywalker? He's the hero of the Republic, which, again, is what makes the story so tragic. But, you start thinking, well, it's probably a fallen Jedi. Who could it be? Which one could it be? Boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden, hey, guess what? They think it's Mace Windu. They think it's, so then they tell the story of, yes, that guy as Darth Vader, he's Darth Vader. He was here, Obi-Wan was here, and Anakin Skywalker was here. But it could have been any of those guys.
You're so right. In so much of Star Wars, just like in human history, word of mouth, right? Stories are told down from generation to generation, and things can get lost in translation and everything like that.
Yes, and in cultural interpretation, and it's a lot of what they build new canon around anyway, because they don't want to be bound to certain things. So they want to be able to contradict themselves by saying, well, it's all legends anyway, if you know what I mean. Every legend comes from a certain point of view. And so, I mean, really, Lucasfilm's kind of endorsing and authorizing headcanon when you think about it.
Well, and you saying that makes me think about, the Kenobi series where the Grand Inquisitor stopped the guy and said, you know who I am? And he said, you're an Inquisitor. You're a fallen, you used to be a Jedi. You're a former Jedi. And you're right. I mean, in their mind, that could be who Darth Vader is right there.
Yeah.
Just a fallen Jedi that's gone over to be this BA. So
yeah, and I can't believe that people wouldn't figure that much out, but they may not figure out the whole big picture, because, I mean, couldn't be Anakin Skywalker, because he's great. He's such a good guy. But
have you watched Light and Magic or the Icons Unearthed on Vice Network?
I've watched the first two Light and Magics, or there'll be lights
and magic.
And let's see. And I've not watched any of the Vice one.
Okay.
No, but the bad thing about the Vice one, I feel terrible about that, is I'm a powerful and influential member of the media. And as such, they sent me the first 2 or 3 episodes before it came on. And I just thought, this is some crock of something. I'm not going to look. And then after it came out, I looked and I was like, oh crap, they were giving me the episode. I thought it was just a press release.
Right.
And then I realized when I looked at it later, I was like, here they sent me one. It was like, here's a link to the first episode. And then they're like, we didn't hear from you, so here are the links to the next 2 episodes. And I'm like, oh crud. Wow, okay. Never mind. So I felt bad about that. Yeah, I had an opportunity to look at that stuff, and I blew it off, I guess.
All famous and powerful, and you let it slide.
If I had realized it, I would not have.
They were both entertaining, but they go back and again, like you, I've watched the first 2 episodes of Light and Magic, and I haven't finished that out yet, but I plan on doing that here very soon. But I really like that kind of stuff. It's one of the things about Star Wars, whether it's our own headcanon based off old books from the 70s or 80s, old comic books, or seeing how the sausage was made, right? Seeing the things behind the scenes, to me, is just such an important part of Star Wars. That's different than so many other things. Like how many other franchises do you really feel like have this library made of how things are made, what happened behind the scenes, and all that? I mean,
I think our generation, and I think current generations are like this, but I think our generation was the first generation that grew up film literate. And I mean film like production literate.
Okay.
Because what happened on the screen in Star Wars was amazing, but it really started a conversation amongst all of us about how did that happen? How did they make this work? What did they? So, we were kids who grew up with, words like blue screen, which is not a thing now, it's green screen, but blue screen was the thing back then. We what 10, 11, 12-year-old uses the word optical printer, but we did, and matte lines. And, we grew up kind of film literate. Now, I think once DVDs came out, I think it made it even more widespread because all of a sudden there were director's commentaries that people were watching all the time. And so people really became film literate. But when I was in college when I learned what an aspect ratio was. And I know the aspect ratio.
Yeah.
And now, like, I'll have conversations with I've been having conversations with my son about aspect ratios for, what is he, 25 now? 15 years.
Wow.
Because that's part of the culture now. People, the vocabulary of film production is kind of everybody's language, but that was really, we were the first ones, talking about stop motion regularly as a generation and blue screens and, all of that.
In the past, it was just movie magic, right? People just said, well, it's just movie magic.
Yeah, it happened. Boy, that's amazing. How'd that happen?
You brought up your son. We're going to have a show in the future about Heir to the Empire, but I think what would be fun is sometime here, maybe as we get closer to the holidays. My son and I started this show as a father and a son. I've heard your son come on and do things with you and talk about other things, other topics.
Yeah, he likes to do things with the Deuce Cast guys way more than me.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun if the four of us, two elder Star Wars fans and two younger Star Wars fans, if we all sat down and talked a little bit, and that age difference and how we see things, perspectives, and all that. And
I'd love that.
Since both of our sons love to talk and like to be in front of microphones and things like that, I think that would be great. So you know what? Count on it. I'm gonna put that in my notes to where we do a father and a son, because Joey and I just did a father and a son show with the Father Son Galaxy podcast.
Cool.
And
cool.
And the gentleman is Kerwin and Keith, and Kerwin, he's probably not my age. He's a little bit younger than me. And then his son Keith is 9 years old.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we had a lot of fun, and it was great because we got to, again, just talk about those differences and those opinions and how we see things at different ages and so forth. So it was a lot of fun, but I think it would be great with me, you, Joey, and the G-Man to get together and do that. I would like to do that. So let's count on that. Let's do that. Hey, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'd love that.
Okay. Have you been purchasing anything recently? Have you been buying any new figures, any new collectibles, anything like that?
It's funny because when they first put the retro line out, I was like, this is my thing. I'm getting the retro line. And then I got the first, the Star Wars ones. I got all the Empire. No, I got pretty much the Empire ones. And then the Mando ones came out, and they were really hard for me to find, which I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And some of my buddies, like Ryan from Dinner for Geeks, kept going, hey, just go and order them from, one of these toy companies. I'm like, no, that's part of the joy is in finding them on the rack, finding them on the shelves, grabbing them off the pegs. To me, that's part of the joy of that. Cause that's, there's something about that retro line that it's about, when you got them when you were a kid, because they are the ones when you got them a kid or in that style. Right. And so for me, I don't want to order a box of them and then have a box of them come in and open it up and go, yep, that's a box of them, and then put it away. That's not the fun part.
Right.
So after I missed out on the Mandalorian stuff, I thought, well, I'll probably just not get any of this stuff and just to heck with it. And then the other day I was in Target and I ran into the Obi-Wan retros, and they had all of them but Reva. And I think the little special feature they have with her is the gut stab feature, which is great. She has gut stab ability, survives any gut stab that she wants. And so I went, well, I got to get these. I got to get these now. And so I bought them all off the rack, and they're populating the bookshelves right now.
I wanted to show you. So same thing. Found this at the store. I was like, Luke and Obi-Wan are my two favorite. I couldn't pass it up. Even though I'm saving back and keeping all my money for my Italy trip, I said, I have to have that. And then I forgot, and I had ordered the 6-inch version of the Wandering Jedi, and it just showed up, and I thought, oh, yeah, I ordered that. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm not standing between you and your wife on that one. I'm getting out of the way.
She knows my love for Luke and Obi-Wan. She was like, hey, you ordered a long time ago. Don't worry about it, So
yeah.
But I have been watching my dollars and cents. I've been very good because Alfie, D-Doc, those guys on the show, they send me things all the time. Oh, this is available. This is available. And I'm like, guys, do not show me this. I don't need this right now. I mean, I do, but I don't.
I'll get that from Ryan. He'll send me something. And he says, this is a great deal. You should get this. And it's like, it's marked down from $200 to $75. It's like, but still $75. Understand. Yeah. Oh. I know 75, next to 200 is not that bad, but it's a chunk of money to blow at once. I will say this though. I did take Ryan up on this one. Hang on. All right. I got it.
You're good. You're good.
The other day, and I drove my wife nuts because I wouldn't tell her why I needed to go to Sam's and buy grapes.
We all have those hidden little tasks or treasure hunts that we're doing. Scott pulls stuff off the shelf.
Ryan sent me on a shopping trip for this. They were selling grapes at Sam's in these little crates.
Those are great.
Yeah. And it's really nice crate. And I don't know what I'm going to put in it, but I made sure I got some. And I don't, as you, I think, know, I don't eat fruits or vegetables. So my wife knew that I had no desire to actually eat the grapes, but she conceded. She let me get the grapes. And
grapes are pretty much the only fruit I will eat.
Is that right?
Yeah. I'll grab like 5 or 6 and just snack on them, and then won't eat anything for like hours. So
yeah, I see. I've got texture issues, and that just eating something that feels like it could be exploding is just not a thing for me. I just don't. Yeah, it's just not a thing.
You had another topic, and we've bounced around it some, and obviously we've been talking about it, and people didn't even know we were talking about it. But Tom Palmer,
yes,
July. He was born July of 1942, passed away August 8th of 2022. Give people some background on Tom Palmer, because when you sent it to me, I thought, I know that name, but where do I know it from? And I went and looked up and found out, wow, no wonder I know this name. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom Palmer was I always consider him to be kind of the glue that held Star Wars together in the Marvel days. Because if you look at his body of work doing Marvel Star Wars, he was a guy who did some of those really early issues. Mm-hmm. He was the inker on 8 and 9 and 10. I think he inked the first few issues, the covers of the first few issues. He also inked some of the upper 50s. And then once the Michelini, Walt Simonson era, then into Ron Friends. I mean, he was the inker for that thing for a really, really long time. So a lot of the consistency of the look. I mean, look, Walt Simonson's great. Don't get me wrong. Love Walt Simonson. Love what he did on that book. But Tom Palmer was the guy who kind of finished that art off and gave it certain aspects of its look. And then, when Simonson leaves, you get Ron Friends who comes in, and it's still got a consistent look to it. That consistent look's Tom Palmer. Palmer also did some of these great painted covers. The one issue that became Jawas of Doom. What was that? 86, I think.
See,
81. 81.
Numbers and dates. You've got them. You're good.
81. So he does the cover of 81, which is just gorgeous. He did the cover for number 50, which is another beautiful cover. I like 81 more, but there are certain artists who do things that just stand the test of time. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the cover for 81 shows up on a lot of different things tells you how great the art is. It's kind of like Gene Day and his Boba Fett cover. That you see that on every 15 seconds. T-shirt. It's on a different T-shirt. It's on a different mug. It's on that's a thing that just it will stand forever. And a lot of Tom Palmer stuff is like that. He was the guy though that really gave a lot of the consistency. And when you look at it, he's inking, like I said, issues 8, 9, 10. This is like the Howard Chaykin era stuff. And he's also inked some of the Carmine Infantino stuff and Simonson, and so he's like there for every little era of Marvel Star Wars, making something happen. And so you can't ignore the stamp that he clearly put on that title.
No, and everybody knows George Lucas. Everybody knows the major players when it comes to the movies and different things like that. Some of the major authors from the novels and so forth. But gentlemen like this and people who are like in those shows that I was just talking about, I don't think they get near the credit that they deserve for people like you and me to be able to look at episode 8 or 9 in this book right here, of this trade paperback and see the artwork that he was involved with right there. That's some of the key, most important Star Wars in the world. Like you mentioned earlier, when you're 6, 7 years old and you're not sure there's ever going to be another Star Wars, you're living vicariously through these 35 or 25-cent comics that are coming out once a month. And so I'm glad you brought him up, because I had no idea how much workload he had in the Marvel comics. Just amazes me. And he also did some Avengers, correct? I think he was in the Avengers comics as well.
He did a lot of in the overall in Marvel, he did a lot of work for Marvel until, I don't know, 20 years or so ago. But I think even then he was doing a little bit of work over the last several years. But he did the Avengers, did Tomb of Dracula, which if you've ever, Tomb of Dracula is a fun read to read straight through, because there are just certain mechanical things about comics writing that become very evident and obvious when you're reading issues that are supposed to be read a month apart, all back to back to back to back, which I did for Tomb of Dracula one time some years ago. And but it's great stuff. I mean, the art, Gene Colan and Marv Wolfman wrote it, which it still kills me that a guy named Wolfman was writing a Dracula book. But it's great stuff. The guy was just, I don't know anybody whose work didn't look better after Tom Palmer was done with it. That's awesome. Just the guy he was. That's the caliber of artist he was. And I don't know anybody. I've never read an interview with anybody in the business who's slagged Tom Palmer.
Well, that is good to hear, and I'm glad you brought it up, because his passing went right by. Right? I mean, how many people put anything about it out there? I don't remember anybody doing anything like that.
Nope.
So to have you bring it up and for us to give him even a shout out and to say how important his work was, I think it is important. And I think people need to, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, go check out some of these old Marvel comics and look and see the work that these people put into them, because yes, some of them are corny, but some of them are fantastic. And the artwork's great in all of them. So so I think it was important, and I'm glad you did bring that up, because again, it opened my eyes to it. I went right to the trade paperbacks after you sent that over, and I was like, holy cow, he was involved with all of these. So it was really cool to kind of go back and refresh all that. So go ahead.
No, he was just, to me, he was just a legendary and a workhorse at the same time, which was great.
Obviously. So here was a question that I just recently asked Mr. Glosson, and I started this question out because when we had the Hyperspace Heroes podcast on with us, we were just bouncing around ideas and thinking about different things. And one of the things came up about ships in Star Wars. And then it made me think, gosh, what new ships really caught my attention or made me think of really cool things in the sequel trilogy? And then I watched these, the icons on Earth on Vice. And then I started watching Light and Magic. And I realized how much George in the original trilogy wanted to push the envelope, and also wanted to wrap in the imagination and the wonderment of children, 6 to 12 years old. The prequels, he did the same thing, because you see all these people coming out of the prequels who are our age or older going, that's not my Star Wars, that's not Star Wars, whatever. But the kids who grew up at that time, look how important those characters, ships, planets, everything are to them. And then I thought, wait a minute, not only ships, but how many planets, how many themes, how many ships, add that in there, in the new sequel Star Wars trilogy, really made it to where you're thinking a 6-year-old is going to leave this and say, that ship or that character or that planet just drew me right in. And in 25 years from now, they're going to be doing a podcast talking about it. I'm not trying to bag on the sequel trilogy. Okay, there were things about the sequel trilogy that I did like.
Mm-hmm.
There were, and I will watch them because all Star Wars is Star Wars to me. It's not like I'm just going to void that out and take it out. It's part of the story because it is now part of it. But I did look and I started to wonder, are we going to have the same effect of these people who are so beside themselves seeing Anakin and Obi-Wan together again on the Kenobi series? Are we going to have that same effect so many years later with this trilogy's kids based on the ships, the planets, and things like that? I don't know that we will. I don't know
No,
that we have that.
no, and it's funny because a lot of the times we talked about this as it was unfolding, as the trilogy was unfolding, there was a certain lack of imaginativeness to both the creature design and the ship design. And the creature design was, I mean, for those of us who loved the original trilogy, I mean, those Cantina guys stayed with us forever. And you look at them
100%.
now and you go, yeah, these guys are okay. They're chintzy costumes put together. They sold us, they sold our imagination. And I don't know that continues on with the sequel trilogy. I think it did with the prequel trilogy because we've got the Dexter Jetsters of the world, and I just and again we talked about Plo Koon earlier, and Kit Fisto and these guys. I mean, we dug that, we got that. It's
Right.
imaginative. The ship designs were imaginative. The Naboo starfighter will stay with us forever and ever and ever. In fact, I mean, what kind of a cheer did it get from people when it showed up in The Mandalorian?
Yep.
But I don't know that giant thing that looks like a train car of a troop carrier from The Force Awakens. And look, G and I were talking about, Garrison and I were talking about this yesterday, even the fact that we still don't get the retroactive hate that Force Awakens gets, because I think Force Awakens is a marvelous movie.
I really enjoyed it.
It's a terrific construct, and and at the time people didn't have the beefs with it that they did after Last Jedi came out, and they decided we have to hate all the Disney stuff.
Right.
And I'm not one of those guys. I have some issues with some of the things they've done. I have some issues with the way they've handled, more handled social media and novels and that kind of thing. But I think Force Awakens is a perfectly good movie. But that having been said, I also find it interesting that people who defend a lot of the stuff that I do criticize in it say, well, it's got to change. It's got to become something new. But there are also a lot of the same people that started bitching and moaning about all the digital stuff, and we've got to go back to practical effects and do it the way they used to do it and shoot it on film and all that. Right. And I don't, first off, I think that from the filmmakers is disingenuous. I think it's disingenuous from fans because they claim they want things to move forward and then they don't really want things to move forward. The reason I think it's disingenuous from filmmakers is like when JJ did the rounds of press for Force Awakens, he kept harping on, we're going old school and practical effects and blah, blah, blah. And it really kind of, again, I saw Force Awakens initially at the theater 7 times. I saw it an 8th time in New York with the New York Symphony, or excuse me, New York Philharmonic. I saw it a 9th time during the COVID lockdowns when I rented the theater and we watched Force Awakens with a small group of us. So clearly I have appreciation for Force Awakens, but it really bothered me when all of the publicity about it was, well, we shot this on film and we did a lot of practical effects, and they kind of tried to pretend there wasn't a lot of digital there, and there's so much digital in it.
Yeah.
And the thing that bothered me about that was not that there's a lot of digital in it, but it's that the guys doing the digital work on those movies worked their butts off. And they worked their butts off. I mean, a great special effect is the special effect that you don't notice, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a special effect you don't know is a special effect. So I always felt like it really kind of belittled the work that these guys had put into that film to run around and talk about how we're not doing much digital stuff in this movie. And clearly these guys had done a ton of digital work on here. But when you try to convince people, oh, there's no digital here, you're basically saying, oh, those guys didn't do all this work on this movie. And that always bothered me. I always thought it was an insult to the guys who did all the digital.
It is a weird thing. I mean, it definitely, I can see where you're saying that, because, you look at the work you do on BB-8, for example, and there's a person standing there in a full green suit, pushing a cart, running everywhere around, doing all these things. And people would be like, oh, well, I mean, that was just a rolling ball right there. No, that's how good it was. It was a digital thing that people were
Yes.
putting in there. So
and again, people, well, that's practical. Look at all the practical. And honestly, some of the practical stuff was some of the worst part of it. I mean, what's the creature that what's his name now? The guy in the desert that tries to steal BB-8. What the heck's his name?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
She says his name.
That's just Tebow.
Yeah.
Tebow? No,
that's the quarterback.
Yeah.
But you know who I'm talking about.
I know.
And then he walks off on he rides off
name.
on his creature, and the creature looks like it weighs about 15 pounds the way it walks, even though it's huge. And you're going, okay, that's practical and it doesn't look so hot. But the digital stuff looks amazing. And, everybody's running around going, there's no digital in this movie. It's nutty.
It's so.
Tito. Is it Tito?
Tito. Maybe
Tito.
it is. Yeah. I don't know. It starts with a T. I know that. I can see Daisy Ridley saying the name right there. I just look, I hope, maybe I'm just too happy of a thinking person. I hope that in 20 years, these same people who grew up with and saw Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker are going, that's my Star Wars. And now I want to take my kids to see this, or I want to show my kids this or that about it. I do. I hope that. I don't know that I feel that it will. I don't, right now, when you should have been really promoting Rey, really promoting Kylo, really promoting Finn, things like that. I mean, that product's really much dried up. There, you can't find a character of those kind of things, right? I mean,
no,
not at all.
And in fact, I will tell you this, I'm a Disney Visa card holder, and they have Star Wars designs for the cards.
Okay.
And so the immediate moment I knew they had Star Wars designs, I did what I had to do, which was I had to go get a Darth Vader credit card. And it's great too, because when I use it, I'll say, we'll let Lord Vader pay for this when I handle the card. And but my wife, of course, did not want a Darth Vader credit card. So she went on the side and she got a BB-8 card. Well, recently her BB-8 card has bit the big one. And we go to the website to look for a new card for her, and they don't have BB-8 cards anymore. The closest thing to a sequel trilogy card they have is they have a Chewbacca card, who clearly the look of Chewbacca from the sequel trilogy, but Joe Q public fan doesn't know that.
Right.
So she's going to get a Baby Yoda one because Baby Yoda is everywhere. And I think a lot of that was they hit a home run with The Force Awakens. They split the fandom down the middle on The Last Jedi, and you could see it from the way the box office dropped over time on that film. It opened really strong and fell a lot faster than Force Awakens, a lot faster. And then by Rise of Skywalker, again, and this is a criticism I've put out there before, Last Jedi, for whatever else you want to say about the contents of it, has a huge flaw in that there is no cliffhanger. There is nothing at all that says, I can't wait for 2 years from now to see what happens next, because it just kind of ends. And
with a kid with a broom.
Yeah, with a kid with a broom and the rebels flying off in the spaceship. And I've long said the kid with the broom should not be shown at the end of the film. What they should do, and I don't know if I've told you this or not, here's how the Last Jedi should have ended. I know I told Around the Galaxy, but now I'm telling Rule the Galaxy. Here's how the Last Jedi ends. They're on the Falcon. Rey meets Poe. Hi, I'm Rey. I'm Poe.
Right.
And pretty soon I'm going to be some British museum guy. I'm going to be 3 or 4 different people. But they're all meeting and greeting on the Falcon, and that's purportedly kind of all there is of the rebellion at this point. And it's not the resistance. And that's another thing that people miss. It's not the resistance anymore. It's been rebranded back to the rebellion. And at that point, the lights flicker. They start to go in and out, and the radio crackles, and every speaker in the place comes to life. And it comes to life with the message that showed up in Fortnite.
Oh,
the Emperor's radio broadcast. And everybody looks around like, what in the hell was that? And then you iris down, go to credits.
I love that ending. I'm just going to tell you right now, I love that ending.
Now you've got something that makes people go, holy, what just happened? I got to go. I mean, at the end of Avengers Infinity War, they didn't go, wow, we defeated Thanos. Wasn't that great? Come back next year for the sequel. It's like, what? No, I don't care anymore because you beat Thanos, or you escaped from Thanos or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
No, what happened was everybody, half of everybody died. People you love. Spider-Man's dead. What do we do next? Vision's dead. What do we do? We've got to find out what happens to half the universe in a year, and that was a huge hook. There was no hook at the end of Last Jedi to bring people back. So
I had not thought about that, but I'm gonna tell the guys on the podcast that story. I want to hear what they think about that ending because I really like that.
I'd love to see somebody fan edit that into the ending of the film. I don't possess the technical skills to do that, but I would love to see that just kind of sprawled out there and just let somebody do it. I think it would work. And again, what you do at the end of that is you go, holy crap, what's going to happen next? The Emperor, what? The Emperor is back. I think it works a lot better than unveiling him in a trailer.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, unveiling him in a trailer is okay, but you don't get anything out of it.
Unfortunately, I don't play Fortnite, so I didn't hear that announcement either. So
no, but you do know what I'm talking about, right?
I thought I thought you were talking about when he was coming out on stage and doing it there.
No. And this is the dumb thing about it. On Fortnite, the game, before Rise of Skywalker came out, they buried a radio announcement from the Emperor. At the beginning.
Yeah, I heard that, but that's what I'm saying.
It's not what's in the trailer. It's something totally different.
Right.
And that's the thing I think they need to put in this. What I was saying earlier is like the first clue we really had the Emperor was coming back was hearing him in the trailer.
Okay. All right.
But what if we had it at the end of Last Jedi?
See, I don't even remember the trailer for that movie. So you're refreshing my memory. You heard the Emperor's voice in that trailer?
In the Rise of Skywalker trailer.
We did? Okay. That
because he
shows
laughs.
how much it stood out. Okay. I like it better being at the end of the movie than in the trailer. You're right.
Yeah. Ian McDermott comes out when they do the trailer at Celebration because his voice is at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and says, do it again.
Right.
And they run
That's
again.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what if, again, they have his announcement to the galaxy that I'm in charge of the galaxy at this point, and oh crap, now we're talking about some serious stakes for the next movie.
Love it. You know what that feels like? That feels like the ending of a Batman TV show back in the 60s right there. Having the Emperor coming over the radio right there. Come back 2 years. Next same Bat
Theater. Yeah.
Right. Same Bat Theater.
But that to me is a thing, but
no,
it didn't happen that way. I'm not a creative. I'm not in the story group. So
maybe we'll create our own story group. I like that idea.
It's the headcanon story group. We can do that.
I'm all over it.
We'll form it. You, me, I'm thinking Glosson, Bray, getting Shazbazar in. We've got the headcanon story group there.
Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be the organizer and I'll just take everything in and compile it all for you. That'll be my 2 cents worth of it.
I've got my list of changes already. Okay. 1, they brought back Valance from the comics. I love Valance.
Yes.
The Valance in the comics ain't right. There's another, let's go off on tangent number 58. There's a thing.
I saw Valance in here. Go ahead.
I wrote a paper in college in 1990 or 91, either right before or immediately after Heir to the Empire came out, because I still cared about Star Wars. And I wrote a paper called Issues of Race and Class in Star Wars, the first film. And was doing work at the video center. Yeah. And I submitted a captioned, edited video supplement to my paper, illustrating scenes and describing things and stuff like that. Got an A on the paper.
Good for you.
But, yeah. But one of the things I always found interesting was how droids are treated in the original trilogy, and particularly the first film.
We talking right there?
That's Valance.
There we go. Valance.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Valance the Hunter.
I knew. I just looked him up. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Walt Simonson drew that issue, by the way. He drew it like 16 and then started again in the 50s. But I did this thing, it was issued Race and Class in Star Wars. I always found it interesting the way the droids are treated, particularly in the first film. And everybody remembers when they try to go into the cantina and they say, hey, they don't serve their kind in there.
I just talked to my son about that line probably an hour before you and I spoke.
And that's literally kind of an illustration of how they're treated as second-class citizens there, but there's also another scene that nobody remembers and equates to the same thing, which is, hey, you're not permitted in there. It's restricted. In other words, droids are not allowed in the escape pods.
Right.
Again, no droids allowed. So again, it's kind of it's a parallel to a race issue that we've seen on Earth.
Right.
And Archie Goodwin picked up that thread and really ran with it in the Star Wars comics in the form of Valance the Hunter. Valance the Hunter was a guy because he was half droid and half human.
Correct.
So he's half what everybody in galactic society hates and half what's acceptable in galactic society. And nowadays, the canon's gotten to the point where there's so many characters with cybernetic this and cybernetic that it doesn't really play anymore. But to me, that was what was always intriguing about Valance, was he kind of had some self-loathing, because
he did.
Even he hated the droid half of him. I mean, really, when you watch the films, I mean, Solo is entirely dismissive of the droids because that's what society is like.
Right.
Luke is one of the few that actually treats the droids with any dignity. And that's because the galaxy is prejudiced against droids. Now, why is the galaxy prejudiced against droids?
Because of the droid army in the prequels.
My belief is that 20 years before that, a droid army tried to wipe out the free part of the galaxy.
There you go.
And of course, the Republic triumphed over these droids, so they think, in becoming the Emperor or the Empire, right?
Love it. Yes.
So we all hate those droids because they tried to undo the whole Republic. And so, yeah, I think that's why, droids can't be trusted. Look what they did. And that's my theory on that. But again, headcanon.
Nope. It's headcanon, but I like it. I mean, that is. Now, I will tell you, because I'll take you on tangent number 73. My son and I was joking around with him because I was at work and somebody was talking about going to a place where a brew house, a local brew house where they make their own beer. But in that place, they don't sell Coors, they don't sell Michelob, they just sell their own varieties. And they have a beer that's like a Miller Lite, and they have a beer that's like a Guinness, whatever, right? But when I was leaving the office and talking about it, somebody goes, they don't serve their kind there, because it was talking about Miller and Coors and all that. I told Joey, I said, I'm waiting for a video of you taking a Miller can and a Bud can, having them shuffle up to a brew house and then saying, we don't serve your kind here. So it's so weird that you brought that back. See, everything's full circle here. Everything's full circle.
Absolutely. I love Valance because I feel like Valance represents that same thing, an exploration of that theme. And if you remember in the issue 16, there's a guy who's like going to pull a gun on him from behind a bar, and he punches through the bar with his robot hand. And he grabs him and starts crushing his hand. And the guy starts yelling, you can't be sentient. You can't be. In other words, you can't really be a human.
Right.
And so they kind of just have him walk around with his parts showing, to borrow a phrase from 3PO, all the time. And it just that frustrates me because it's not a good representation of Valance.
I tell you what, this is exactly why I like having conversations with you and Adam and Steve, because I remember those things once you guys refresh them in my head. And I know I've looked and read, but you guys have them in almost page by page. Like you said, day and date. You have them right there locked in. We have Alfie on our show who's exactly the same way. We call him the Book of Alfie because we just mention it and he just goes, right? He knows when that character was made, when that show came out. And I'm like, gosh. And so I'm glad that I'm just the host, because if it was relying on me to know all the information, it would be a very subpar show. So
I don't believe it.
But
not for a second.
Well, no, I appreciate that. So I tell you what, you were, gracious enough to take time out of your busy day to come do this. I wanted to make sure it happened before I left and before I took off for Italy. Anything you want to hit on before we close up shop here on this special fireside chat? Any topic you want to hit before we break away? Okay.
Yes. Something occurred to me, and I've mentioned this to you before, and then it hit me while we were talking, and I pulled it up. I did this some years ago for another podcast. I actually did it for a convention.
Okay.
Where we were doing a panel on Marvel Star Wars, and I titled the panel Marvel Star Wars, It Ain't Just a Green Rabbit, or a Big Rabbit. And I put together a thing that I called Marvel Star Wars in 5 minutes. Now, the truth is, when I did it, it wound up being about 7 minutes, but it was the best I could do. And it was a piece that I did. And again, it was pre-recorded, but it basically summarized there is a mention of every single issue of the original Marvel Star Wars. And I've not done this in maybe 10 years.
Okay.
When I first put this together, but I would like to do it for you right now. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So here it is, Marvel Star Wars in 5 minutes. And again, I'm reading this and I'm doing it cold because I haven't looked at this in 10 years.
Okay.
But we're going to try this. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
And if you want to time me, you can time me. It ain't going to be 5 minutes, but it's going to be close. All right. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, so it starts with A New Hope. If I have to summarize that, you don't need to be listening. But then after the Death Star and Chewie split off, Han and Chewie split off and go to see Jabba and pay him what they owe him. However, they're hijacked by Crimson Jack and Jolly, who's never kissed a man, and they steal their reward for rescuing the princess. So they bum around on a strange planet and are approached by 3 space monks who had agreed to recruit the Magnificent Seven, but 8, and in space. And yes, there's a giant green bunny, but I wouldn't mess with the guy because contrary to rumor, he's a bit of a badass. They fight the guy from Mad Magazine and then face the behemoth. Then they get captured again by Crimson Jack and Jolly, who's never kissed a man, and find that he's taken Leia captive. He then gets her free, and they go find Luke, who in a striking moment of irony has crash landed on an all-water planet. See, he's from a desert planet, and oh, you get it. Anyway, Luke's been taken by pirates who live in a floating Lincoln log ship. They shut down the pirates and run into space where they're stopped by Crimson Jack again. This time he and Solo suit up for a space duel, and just as Crimson Jack's about to kill Solo and Jolly, who's never kissed a man, she sacrifices herself to save him because she's secretly in love with him. So he kisses her when she's dead. Kind of gross. Then Valance the Hunter, who hates droids, shows up where the Magnificent Space 8 were recruited, and he tries to figure out the name of the person who destroyed the Death Star. By the way, Valance is half droid, which is why he hates droids. Deep. Luke then takes a moment to extensively remember the time during the Skyhopper races they had to fight off a bunch of sand people. Then it's time for the Empire Strikes. That's it, just the Empire Strikes. Luke's mind touches Vader's mind in the Force, and he blacks out. The Star Warriors take him to the wheel, an off-track gambling satellite where they heal him, draw Vader's attention to get Han and Chewie thrown into an arena where only one will live. They barely escape ahead of Vader, but then they probably ought to flash back again because they're tired. Leia tells the story of Obi-Wan using a ship to play dead during the Old Republic era, but then it's back to the present of a long time ago. TIE fighters raid Yavin base, but they can't figure out how they got there. Turns out they're hiding in a vortex on Yavin created by the Taggy family scientists. Luke checks it out, takes a stolen tie, and destroys the turbine that creates the vortex. But wait, Valance the Hunter's back, and he still hates droids, even though he's half droid. He's looking for the name of the person who destroyed the Death Star because Vader wants the name, and it's a hot commodity. He finds out it's Luke, and he thoroughly kicks his ass, only to have 3PO intervene. 3PO's attempted sacrifice causes a change of heart for Valance, who decides Luke's okay because he has a special relationship with droids. He decides to protect him, but wait, Han and Chewie are holed up in a cave trying to escape the skinny cat-like Jabba the Hutt with 1 T. All of a sudden, they find out the cave is full of metal-eating bugs. The bugs eat half of Jabba's guys, and they get away only to have to rescue Jabba, for which he agrees to waive their debt to him. You remember that, right? Next, Vader finds out that a rebel deserter named Tyler Lucian knows the name of the guy who blew up the Death Star, so he goes to talk to him. Valance beats him there and gives his life on an acid planet to protect the coward. The coward sees this and sacrifices himself to protect Luke's identity. Leia then goes to an Imperial slave planet to sow the seeds of rebellion and help a little girl sow some real seeds. Then the gang reunite to defeat an evil winged ruler of a planet whose 3 favorite Jedi are Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Darth Vader. Okay, so they can't count. Anyway, Luke then goes home to Tatooine, commandeers a sandcrawler, and discovers a secret Taggy plan to freeze the rebel planet. Luke lays the smack down to Baron Taggy and escapes from their clutches, only to barely warn the fleet not to get frozen. The Taggies, however, refuse to let it go. Meanwhile, Sister Domina travels to tell the rebellion that even though they're neutral, the Empire is vying for their services, and he'd like Luke to propose an alternative to her monastery planet of Monastery. Turns out she's Sister Domina Taggy, and she recruited Luke because Vader finally found out his identity. Baron Taggy finds out his sister, the one pure Taggy, is in evil league with Vader and freaks out. Luke agrees to meet Vader in a field of spontaneously growing crystals, fights Vader to the death, only it's not Vader, it's Baron Taggy with Vader's image force projected over him. This leads to, no wait, a bounty hunter sneaks up on Solo on Ord Mantell. Han shoots first, and the bounty hunter tells him Jabba reinstated the price on his head because he was bankrolling Crimson Jack, and Solo took him out, of course. This sets up The Empire Strikes Back. No, wait, not yet. The issue that would be that isn't, because Luke and Leia instead get swallowed up by a giant living ship who lets them go after they teach it about love. Now The Empire Strikes Back. After Empire, Luke fights a sentient probe droid. Hey, where'd he get that lightsaber? Then Lando witnesses the end of Cody's sonchild. R2 and 3PO defuse a war droid on Droid World. Leia and Vader fight it out for a bank loan. Leia gets a hookup as Luke honors a crazy old creature who thinks he's a Jedi. Luke catches the Crimson Forever, but he's saved more or less by Domina Taggy. The Empire decided to build a second Death Star. Well, no, that's what Dave Michelini wanted to do, but wonder why Lucasfilm wouldn't let him. Anyway, Vader's men try to kill Vader. The rebels foil the second Death Star called the Tarkin, and Vader foils the officers. Next, Leia visits Barsoom. That's all I got on that one. But the rebels then find a base with Pliff and the Hoojibs, and they defeat the Slivalisk. Lando sneaks back to Cloud City, where a malfunctioning Lobot tries to beat the crap out of him. An Imperial officer showed up just as things get good and kicks Lando off of Cloud City. Yes, off of Cloud City. Lobot uses a jetpack to save him, and they go down to Bespin and get help from the Ugnaughts. Meanwhile, Luke and his new lady friend, Shira, go to Cloud City to find Lando, only to mix it up with the Imperials. Cloud City is saved and the residents come back home. Next, R2 and 3PO save the rebel ship from being burned up by going on a spacewalk. Luke and Lando go to a market planet and are almost eaten by a trash monster. Then Luke finds out his lady friend Shira was a refugee from the Empire, and she goes back to her home planet to honor their sacrifice to the Empire. The Empire has a new secret weapon, and Luke and his new lady friend Shira, remember her, go on a mission to stop it. They're often in ties during the battle, and Luke has to use the Force to decide who's trying to kill him and blow him up. When he gets back, he finds the last guy he blew up was his new lady friend, Shira. No! He's arrested and escapes, returning to her home planet to repeat her ritual, only to find out she was an agent of the Empire and she was sending signals to Darth Vader. Before his trial, Luke somehow goes to a planet of jousting lizards. Then the trial. Luke's found not guilty in just over 2 pages. Then the rebels are sent to destroy a new Imperial recorder that's all natural. Luke mixes it up with the water bandits and makes it rain all up in there. Then the gang get a flashback from Solo's past because, well, we've missed him. Then Chewie, R2, and 3PO tackle the Darker. Then the gang decide to go after Solo. Finally, not sure why it took so long, but hey, I'm not complaining. First, Leia tracks down and confronts Boba Fett. No, wait, it's another Mandalorian named Finn Shiza, who was a buddy of Boba's back when the Mandalorians fought on the Emperor's side in the Clone Wars. Don't ask. They wind up driving the Empire out of the city of Bone. Meanwhile, in an even distribution of labor, Luke, Han, and Chewie go to Stenax, where Solo got mixed up with natives in the god statue called Vol. There, they run across some old associates of the scoundrels Rick, Danny, and the Rhodian Cheeto. No, he is not orange. Through their adventure, they find Bossk and IG-88 with a carbon-frozen Cheeto. Curse the luck. They make friends with the Vol worshippers and escape. Only Danny, a species of horny alien called a Zeltron, stows away and puts the moves on Luke, who's already trying to deal with his feelings for Leia. Back when life was simple. They then run into the Losbies, cute as Ewoks, which don't exist yet, but when they reach puberty, they turn into muscle-bound raging creatures called Hux. I'm sure that was intentional. Anyway, Leia disguises herself as a chanteuse, and her sexy tones send a Losby into puberty. She then has to calm him down by singing to him. Next, they go to a water planet where outsiders aren't welcomed by some. Their city's destroyed, and it's blamed on a water breather, Kiro, but he was set up. Vader finds out that they're there. He sends troops. A firefight breaks out, and so does a sea serpent. Then Luke's childhood Tatooine buddy, Wedge, gets stuck in a transport after the Battle of Hoth and is about to give up hope when he's rescued by his old childhood buddy, Luke. Luke disses some kids who idolize him, and so one of them becomes a stormtrooper. Lando calls himself Drebel, dresses up like Captain Harlock in order to scheme his way into a goddess called the Minstrel. 3PO falls in love with a robot named Ellie, who's blown away looking out for her master. Then Return of the Jedi. Well, it would have been if they hadn't run that adaptation, if they had actually run that adaptation of Marvel Star Wars. This is where it would have been. Next, Boba Fett takes on Solo again on Tatooine after crawling out of the Sarlacc pit, but he commandeers a sand crawler that winds up falling right back into the pit. Luke goes to hang with Kiro, and Kiro leaves his people and takes off with Luke. Lando teams up with a hot chick for a filler con game story. Han wins a crystal from a legendary star system at a card game and goes to their home for more, but it doesn't work out. The real Drebel wants Lando's hide, but he and Lando end up teaming up, and Lando gives him a gift, the Vol Goddess statue, right in front of some Vols. Leia's life is saved by a stormtrooper from Alderaan. He dies. She cries. She's a chick. Rick, Dula, Danny, and Kiro show up, and everyone's in danger, and Kiro nearly dies trying to save everyone. Danny thinks he's hot. Lumia arrives on the scene. She wears armor like Darth Vader's, but with metal Princess Leia cinnamon buns. But who is she under the respirator mask? Luke gets involved in a civil war on a planet where there's always a traitor, always. Leia struggles with identity issues. Is she a soldier or a diplomat? On Kashyyyk, the gang meet a guy named Knife who looks like Frankenstein, and they bust up slavers. A potential apprentice for Luke shows up, and she's really his own sister, and he dies. What? Best left there. Anyway, Luke settles the issues on the planet of the kitty cats. The Losbies and the Ewoks declare war on each other. Yes, that's how far we've sunk at this point. Then Knife comes back. Kiro's attacked, and Luke gets the crap kicked out of him by Lumia and her light whip. Luke managed to Hulk out and knock off Lumia's mask, and she turns out to be his new lady friend, Shira. Just let me tell you, back then that gave a lot of us a lot of life to a dying book. It was a cool reveal in the middle of a pool of sub-mediocre stories. Then the Nagai invade. One of them tortures, rapes Danny, and they develop a relationship. Hey, if it were written by a guy, I'd want him arrested. Next, Solo and Lando save kids in a Goodwin Williamson story out of nowhere. Then Lando falls ill, and Han threatens to blow up a planet unless he's saved. And the Nagai war resumes, and Han's childhood buddy Bae betrays him. Ooh, just wait. Next, Solo runs into his childhood buddy Bae for the first time in years. See, because of the 100th issue, they had to be printed out of sequence. Yes, someone should be shot first. They return to Kiro's world to save the day, and Kiro takes off to protect his people again. Then Leia winds up with a Nagai after a battle. They're supposed to learn to trust each other. Then he gets killed, and she cries again, all because all the girls have been crying lately. Leia, 3PO. Anyway, these giant bugs who were supposed to be allies were actually traitors. Hey, they're bugs. What do you expect? Then they changed size because, hey, they're bugs. What do you expect? Finally, 30 issues seem to have passed between 106 and 107, and they're fighting the end of a huge war, and Bay's a good guy again, and everybody's happy. The end.
That was it was about 8 minutes.
Okay.
About 8 minutes. But I don't know how you did all that. I would have tripped up and quit halfway through because I can't keep doing that. I'm glad that's on my show. I'm actually glad that's on my show because for our Rule the Galaxy fans, if you haven't read the Marvel comics, there's 107 right there that he just went through.
110 because all the annuals are in there
too. The annuals. Forgot about the annuals.
Yeah.
So, but what I would do is highly suggest now going and finding the trade paperbacks version because it's probably easier to find than the originals and catch up with what Scott just did right there. I feel honored that Scott did that on the Rule the Galaxy podcast. So how many times have you done that?
I haven't done, I did it once. I pre-recorded it once years ago and edited it down and, you know, got all the mistakes out of it, which clearly I didn't get the mistakes out of this. But I mean, all the typos are still in the document and everything. So I was lucky enough to figure out what it said. That's probably literally the second time I've done that.
Okay.
So,
well,
first time in 10 years.
I'm feeling good because I'm going to show off to Glosson and some of the others that I have that recorded right here. And it's going to be played probably in the next week on our show. Scott, you are a gem. You are a good friend. You're a guy who I look up to, and I appreciate all that you do for the Rule of the Galaxy podcast.
Thank you.
You know, just thanks for being you. Thanks for being a part of it, of what we do, and thanks for taking the time to come and do this.
Oh, thanks for letting me do stupid things like what I just did. So, I mean, not everybody would do that. So I appreciate it.
Well, no worries. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got it right here written down. We will have a Heir to the Empire show. We will have a father and son show. We'll do that. We'll try to get all those done before the end of the year. How's that? When I get back from Italy.
Sounds good to me.
I will reach out to you. I wish you nothing but the best. Good luck in DC if I don't talk to you before then. And I tell you what, Star Wars fans, go to your podcast platform of choice. Go look up my Star Wars story, and Scott's. They're still out there. Go listen to these great interviews that Scott has done with some great people in Star Wars that really take you deeper into the story and see what Star Wars means to these people. So go check that out. Also, as always, you can follow us at Rule the Galaxy SW on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us at Just Rule the Galaxy on Facebook and YouTube. Rule the Galaxy podcast on TikTok. Etsy, just type in Rule the Galaxy, all one word. You'll find us somewhere in there, shirts, hats, everything like that. Last but not least, after you listen to this and you want a full detailed copy of what Scott just read, email us at rulegalaxysw@gmail.com for your Cliff Notes version of the Marvel comics in 7 or so minutes. Thanks again, Scott. We really appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely, man. Have a great trip to Italy.
I will try to do that. And for all you guys listening out there, all you ladies, all gentlemen, thanks so much for being a part of what we do. And until the next time, may the Force be with you.